outside too much for you. We can shut this down. Helps with the temperatures. Thank you. Please, while I do the same, but make sure your cell phones are off. Nancy, would you please do the roll call?
Collette.
Here.
Guy.
Here.
Cinema.
Here.
LaPointe.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
White.
Here.
Solinger.
Here. Thank you. Every other month, we try to have an open public discussion. It's not limited to public comments, it's just open public discussion. So at this time, I'll open it for that from anybody that has anything they'd like to. Hearing none, we'll close that portion and go right to our limited public comment. So at 7:01, I'll open for limited public comment. Anybody? Hearing none, I'll close that at 7:01.5. How close you can get this. Approval of agenda. There's a couple things we want to add to the agenda. One is under reports. We're going to have the road commission talk a little bit about your Mauser on that, the item number 3 under report. And number 2, we got in the, I guess it was the tax bills, a little note that the public wanted us to read, so I've got that, a note from the public. It's under correspondence. Is there anything else anybody has? Yes.
I would like to add Parks and Rec in the chart meeting that I had with Julie, so I can just bring the board abreast on what that discussion was, and then the snow plowing that I had mentioned that I wanted on the agenda.
So you want that under new business then? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I mentioned it at last meeting
Yep.
about having the meeting, so I'm just wanting to let you guys know what came of that, and then the snow plowing on a portion of the tar trail
So
that's
that
enacted.
can all be part of the same discussion.
Correct.
Okay, I'll just mark it as item 6 under new part.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody in the audience? Otherwise, hearing none, I'll ask for approval of agenda with changes as noted.
Move to approve changes noted, adding item number 6 to new business.
And the other 2 I mentioned?
Those also.
Okay, just to make sure. There are second.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm sorry, thank you. Inquiry to any conflicts of interest from the board tonight on any item on the agenda. Hearing none, we have none. Consent calendar. Paul, can you read the consent calendar?
Purpose is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together for one board motion, roll call vote without discussion. Request to remove any item for later discussion on the agenda from any member of the board, staff, or public shall be granted. 1, to receive and file Treasurer's Report, August 2013. Clerk's Report, August 2013. Draft unapproved meeting minutes, Planning Commission 9/16 of 13. Park Maintenance Report, Tom Hinkle. Metro Insider Newsletter, September of 2013. Planning, Zoning, and Administrative Activity Report, and North Light, August 2013. For action, consider approval for Township Board meeting minutes of 9/3 of 2013. Accounts payable prepaid the amount of $4,208.32. Current to be approved $57,694.18 plus $2,400. Recommend approval, Kathy Dodd.
Thank you. Anybody from the board have any items they want removed from the consent calendar? Amy?
Can I get Township Board meeting minutes of 9/3/13?
Okay, item A. Anybody else?
I would like to have the Treasurer's Report removed and the accounts payable removed.
Sorry, say again.
And the accounts payable? The accounts payable and the Treasurer's Report.
Thank you.
So number 2 will be Treasurer's Report, and number 3, accounts payable. Anybody else? Anybody from the audience have anything? Okay, hearing none, we need a motion for the consent calendar minus the items we removed for approval.
So both action items, is that correct, or just part of?
You don't need the first action item. Well, actually, since that's been removed, Amy has to remove that. I think it's just to receive and file. Would be the way I'd see it.
Right, so the action items are,
Separate, they've been moved down, yes.
make a motion to approve consent calendar, basically the receive and file portion.
Do you have a second?
Without the treasurer.
Except for 1A.
I'm sorry, except for the treasurer's report.
Oh.
Second.
All in favor?
In that case, we're not spending any money, are we?
Not yet. Don't believe. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. None? Okay, let's go to the items we've moved down. First item is Township Board meeting of 9/3. Amy?
On page 3 of the minutes, in that motion, I thought we had an amount of money to not exceed, so I just thought that that was a pretty specific point. That was not in it.
What motion,
Was the, on page 3?
which
top-
number, which number?
This is for the minutes, right?
J, new business, 2B, the motion on the top of page 3. And so, and it was, right.
Oh, the bottom of the top, shoreline improvement.
Yeah, and I just know that was a pretty big discussion about the amount of money that we were approving in there, and it's not in. 'Cause I thought it was 6,500, to not exceed the 6,500. And that was not. So that's it. So I just think it should,
We need to go back and look at that. I'm sure it's probably right, just look at the recording of
and
it.
just double check the 65, up to
Yeah,
65.
yeah, that's fine. I think I kind of recollect that number. Okay. Any other question on that item from anybody? Yeah, it's this and this. Right, yes. It's a split on 2 pages. Okay? So we should, I think we have to leave that open to check it. So I don't think we had approved that.
Can we leave that one item open and close the rest of it out?
I would suggest.
I think you need to leave,
The whole
you need
thing.
to leave the minutes
Okay.
up there to approve that thing.
Yeah, okay.
If you don't know the answer to it, if you don't have the ability to figure it out right now.
I think we just.
Just a question, clarification. That was just for the south part, right?
Yes.
The motion doesn't kind of, it talks about phase 1 and phase 2, but it really was what we've been calling the south part.
Right,
Okay.
right. What was
So-
purchased under phase 2 and phase 3? Would be another way to look at it. Okay, next item, I believe this one open. Treasurer's report, Connie? This is your first page.
I wanted to just, I changed the report format a little bit, so I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Because the old format, it was a little difficult to be able to see the balance in all the funds. So if you've noticed, this report, I've moved all the 101 assigned funds up into the first section. Also, the septic plant funds, we've made an adjustment at the year end, and that changed from 339 to 187. So that answers your question, Gordy, why the difference, because that was done as of June 30th.
And that adjustment was part of the money we had set aside originally.
Correct.
Great.
Yep, yep. But
That was done, I'm sorry, when was that done?
June 30th, it was one of the adjustments we've made for the year-end adjustments as of June 30th. So it adjusted.
Even though it didn't show in the July
We did it this-
31st balance.
Right, we adjusted the June 30th balance, which
Okay.
then adjusted July and August. So that's why that's different. The other part of this that I need to bring to everybody's attention is the balance in the general fund, the 101 fund, the 634,024. Out of that, we have, you can see that those items underneath that are committed or assigned with a balance of 634,000, or 614,000. We've committed the sailor parks, I've talked to those things. which leaves us a balance at the end of August of $20,000 in the general fund.
Say what was the last?
It leaves us a balance of $20,000 in the general fund.
Balance?
Well, there's different funds inside the 101. So the 354,000 is there, but it's committed,
It's committed to our budget.
right?
It's funds that have been previously set aside by the board, committed for other things. What we have left in general is $20,000.
And the big part of that is the reserves, the 354 reserve, which is kind of an I don't say arbitrary, but
It's hard to say it that way because really, there's 374,000 in there, but 354 of it's committed to other items.
Right.
So I
Right.
mean, to say there's 20,000, there's 20,000 uncommitted.
Right.
There's a difference.
Doesn't,
So we can still meet our budget, our expenses. We just don't have extra money.
Well, where do we get it from?
well, let me ask a question. And I don't, I seem to recall that someplace along the line, they set a balance that they just want to hold in reserve, not committed in the general fund, that it's, I don't know, 50% of your revenue or something is kind of the
Right.
goal. That's a nice, I guess that's a number that the board determined that isn't a law or statute that it has to be 50%. So for my clarification, if something was to happen, some unexpected expense comes up, it's not a huge stretch and totally out of the bounds of good accounting practices to lower that to give us more flexibility.
I don't know that. I know that we are supposed to have so much in reserves. I'm not sure exactly.
6 months, I
Yeah.
believe we set it up.
And
No,
that's what this
We
is.
set
My question is,
three, we said.
Right, I believe we set it at 6, minimum's 3.
Okay.
okay, minimum of 3, the target is 6.
Right, I believe that's what we said.
Okay, we should probably look that up so we just know if we've got an issue that we have some flexibility of 150,000. If we chose as a board to lower the
Now,
50%.
that committed funds, does that include the 50,000 that's committed to the trustees contingency fund? That's not spent, it's just committed to the trust, you know what I'm saying? So really, there's another 70,000 that's, or
You mean the self?
out of the budget.
The self-
Budget.
No, out of the budget, didn't we have 50,000 that was left in the trustees?
Well, the problem, I mean,
The
that's
board of trust,
the difference
right, Amy?
between,
20, was it? Okay.
20.
and this is more of a cash flow problem than a budget problem. Because we're gonna get money in, but, you know, we don't get Acme taxes until winter. There's no summer taxes that go to Acme.
Okay.
is this historical though? I mean,
Well,
is
that's my question, has this
Is this-
happened before?
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm just curious, I've never been here very long, so I don't know what the history.
I don't know.
Well, I would say it could be a cash flow thing, but I think somebody should look up, one should look up and see if there's flexibility, or if we continue to have a cash flow issue and we dip below it, we're not into calling a special meeting to do something. What is the process to lower the bar from 6 months to 5 months?
That's a resolution by us. If we want to change that bar from 6 to, down to 3, 5, whatever, that's up to us.
It is a firm resolution to keep that 6.
That was done previously, we've never
Is that
changed
what
that
you recall?
resolution.
You
I
were
thought-
here.
I was.
Before we were here, that was not
No,
set.
I
No, but he was at
I
the
was-
meeting.
Oh, at the meeting.
And I'm sure the previous board, I'm pretty sure said it at 6.
And we've got, for September, we had, you know, a lot of taxes come in, so we do have a 1% admin fee, and we got 73,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And 50 for our state tax revenue in September, so we end September, I checked that out, we end September at about 35,000. So we still have October, November, and part of December. Well,
So your caution probably is that don't spend any extra money for stuff. Not
well,
budgeted money.
no, the problem is if we pay the $57,000 that we have in accounts payable, we can't take it, where do we take it from? We gotta figure out how to pay these. we'd have payroll tomorrow, and we've got 57,000 in payables sitting here, so we have to figure out where are we gonna take money from to pay it. We have cash in the bank, but it's tagged.
Well, then,
We
if
have
we're
to
sitting there,
untag
if we're
something.
sitting there with a $20,000 float right now, that's not sufficient. I think we should take an action to lower it.
I've
So
never
we're
seen
not-
this before, this is what's bothering me.
Well,
I don't
that's-
understand it, I don't disagree with your thoughts there, but I've never seen this before, that the board at this time of year would say, we don't have any money to pay
Well,
our
But if they were lumping
month in and
it,
month out bills. That's
but if
what
they were
they're saying.
lumping it together as it was, we were looking at before, as all one big number, then it would have never been alarmed. But now that she's taking it and
Well, no,
showing it,
Well,
actually,
isn't
we
part
were,
of the 57,000, part of that, the committed funds of the 354 anyways?
no, you mean the 57 that we got today? That would come out of general operating.
Okay. And isn't the general operating figured into the committed funds?
No, that's reserve that says that.
The self-funded account,
That we don't have anymore. We don't need that.
the 354,875, isn't that still the
It's
reserve?
self-funded, yeah.
That's our
reserve.
6-month reserve.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
So here, I mean, we have, in the bank accounts, in the bank, we have 634,000. But that's not all just play money. It's earmarked. We have 354 that the board previously said you can't touch that. That's set aside for 6-month reserves. 61,920, you can't touch that. That's set aside for Sailor Park. 187, you can't touch that.
well,
That's what I mean.
I get
So
it.
when you get that down, there's 20,000 left that you can touch.
can I ask a question? The subject plan funds, was that the thing that kind of cleared this whole thing?
That was always put
Was that
aside
always put aside?
in case we had a bond issue problem and we didn't have the revenue at the septic plant to pay those bonds. That was put aside for that
Well,
purpose.
should we look at that, because I think in the commissioner's report, the septic plant's been running along, paying their bills, so why are we sitting on 187,000 on something that
I think that's a very valid question.
is,
When we get to Dean Bott's decision, he won't be here tonight, I'm going to give it, but basically, this present month coming up, the bond that will be due for this month or next month, there's enough money for them to pay it and actually give us some money back from what we've, what do you call it? Loaned them, advance we've loaned them. Thank you, yes. So there is some money in there.
okay, so can we look, is the 187 just too high of a number to be sitting there doing nothing? I mean, rather give back to the taxpayers and just have it sit there if it's not,
Well, I think the question Connie's bringing up, I think that's a good question, but also, so you take, let's say we take 70,000. What do you do next month? Because you have the same run rate on your budget.
Right.
So I think we have a combination of things. One, we could take money out of there, but leave some reserve till we see how we go. And two is, I think we could lower that 6-month down to less than 6 months. But when I do all three of these, I'd have to have a better analysis from Connie on what she thinks the revenue is. She's given us some tips of that, the 1% and the sales tax, you said.
Yeah, we had 73,000 and 50,000 come in September. This is August, so you won't see that. So
Okay.
when I went through
Okay, you're right.
September. So we had 125,000 come in September. We didn't spend all that, so that took the 20 up to 35. In October, we, you know, the 1% is pretty much done, so that's not gonna come in. But we'll still have another 50,000 in the state sales tax that comes every other month. So we got that in September, we should see that in November. But, yeah, and I don't know, we'll get some cable fees and some little things in too, so. But the Acme operating from taxes, they won't start until after the December 1st bills go out.
We're right now at a run rate plus and minus 36,000 on the month. Any one month it can be
Yeah.
different based on the bills you receive.
Yeah,
And is that looking at Kathy's
Yeah.
report on expenditure.
yeah.
My take would be that we need to move some money out of the septic plant fund tonight so that the bills that we take care of. But we need some more analysis of what's the money coming in and how much more we need to do, just so we have a better feel for that.
And the minute we have an issue with our, anything to do with the septic line, septic, anything, we're gonna wish we didn't touch that fund. That's why it's there. That's why we had to
septic
raise the,
Isn't it?
Say that again.
the minute we have a problem with any of our sewer lines or anything like that, that's
This
what
is
that
not
money
sewer money.
This isn't sewer.
This is
septic
only
plant.
septic plant, only for leak, pumping out. This was when they had the bond issue, we didn't have enough rates, we weren't making, that's all that was for, it had nothing to do with basic sewer. Is that what you were gonna
Yeah.
say? Okay. Yeah, that's all that was put there.
Well, you can ask Larry what his,
No, it is.
no, his thoughts are, I think,
Yeah,
there's,
well, we basically have a 1-year period where, they chose to increase the rate on the flow. And the expectation at the beginning was that we were gonna see less flow because of the higher rate, and that was not the case. We were actually seeing more flow, paying the higher rate and not complaining, which was kind of a surprise to all of us, to be honest with you.
Let me say it a little different way than you said. I think, I talked to Dean about this thing. It's not there's two things that happen. One is our revenue's up
Yeah.
because of the rate increase. So that's a
Correct.
plus. The flow is down, but not at the level everybody thought it would be down.
Got it.
So it is not like it's up, but it is, if you look at the charts, it is down.
Is that based on their projections?
Right,
their budget.
right, exactly.
So, but if you're gonna ask me as just a citizen, I would say that, you probably want to reserve something, so you'd have maybe a 3-year history rather than a 1-year history. But I don't know if you need to go to the extent of 180,000. But that's something you can do an analysis on, go back.
I guess I think we do need to look into this a little more, but from what Connie said, we've already deposited now. We really can pay the bills for this month. It's the end of September, we're gonna be short, and maybe that gives us some time to figure out where these funds
I thought
are
you said there was only
shuffling.
20 there now.
Yeah.
Well, there is, but that only shows 20 here, but you said there was 70,000, 73,000 that came in September that's not being reflected here, and 50,000 that's not being reflected
But
here.
then we paid out most of that. So we ended up with a plus of 15 at the end of September.
At the end of September.
So now we're going into October, what do we do?
Right, but we're approving the bills right now, are we not? For September, we won't do October's bills until November.
I just did checks, I didn't do almost checks. These checks haven't been written yet,
Oh,
neither is payroll.
okay, so those checks aren't,
The checks are from September though, even though today's
But
not.
they haven't come out of our funds.
Right,
That's
the
what Connie
bills,
said.
it's come out of the expense line items, but it hasn't come out of the cash.
Oh, right.
right, but I guess if there's a deposit in there of 123,000, that's not also being reflected here. We're not showing 123,000 either, right?
Right, right, but you're also not showing all the money that was spent on that 123.
I know, but if I take 123,000 and I take 57,000 or 60,000, that still leaves us,
I guess I'm
You
not
did.
being real clear.
okay,
So at the end of August, which is what we have in front of us,
correct,
it comes out to $20,000.
correct,
Okay, so what we got coming in September was the 123.
plus 20,
No.
yes, because you said we had 20 at the end of the month.
Okay, so you're adding
So
together.
143,000,
Okay.
rounding. Okay, so we have 143,000 coming into this
And we
month.
spent already 100 and,
Where did we spend the 100?
in September, you don't have it here. You don't have this here.
We're always
You
a
don't
month late on our expense.
You're
report.
not showing this, but you're also not showing the 110 that went out.
Okay, so now we have 110 that was spent, that leaves us 33,000. Right.
That's where we are today.
As of today, outside this 57,000?
Or 57. Yeah, we haven't, this hasn't been deducted from this yet. This is the bank account. And the 57,000, she's asking us, can I write checks? And I'm saying, if.
That's why I think we ought to, I think we can reduce, Paul's right, we have to be very careful in the septic because we've been caught before. But I would think before we took our self-funded 6-month down, maybe what we should do is take 57,000 or 50,000 out of this 187. And then between now and next meeting, I think we'll have to have a special meeting and we'll just talk about this. But we also know we'll have bills, and so that we'll have a little more data to see in front of us accurately.
What I would also.
That way you have a little cushion.
Is this just a different way of looking at this? I mean, I've been on the board for 8 years and I've not ever heard this come up before.
I agree.
I looked, that's why I looked. And
So, I mean, is it a different way of looking at it that's
Or did
throwing
the-
the wrench in it?
No, I wonder though if maybe that they knew that maybe a previous board knew this and set money aside. Because what we need to do this year, when taxes come in, we need to take some of that and know this is gonna come up next fall. So we need to build that.
Separate session.
Yeah, we need to have our cash account have enough money in it to be able to take us through until it starts coming again.
I don't agree with you, Sam, but I've also been to all the meetings before. I have never, in this time of year, the second meeting, heard this kind of discussion. I've heard about, remember the fire fund we used to have where they had to borrow money to pay the
Right.
fire fund for, but this one I've never heard. So there's something,
Well, that's what I'm saying, is maybe they prepared for these months and we,
I don't see it in any documents, you could be right.
but I mean, no, I don't mean by putting it in board resolution, by just not spending it and having it sitting in the checking
Oh,
account.
well,
That's the only
that's a
thing.
possibility, something that's deferred upon, you're right.
Yeah.
I just don't remember that being discussed, but you could be very well right, somebody just did it. But right now, we're faced with this, all right? We have to do what we're faced with. Now,
And
we
if
can
we
also
do
take
use-
it out of the self-funded account, we don't have to take it out of the septic, that's another place to give it. We just have to,
Just that we have to know what the ramifications of that are. I mean, do we have to keep 6
no,
months?
3 months.
3 months.
is-
And we know that.
Yeah,
And then if we do that, it would be nice if we would plan on putting it back.
we should, but I believe if we, once we understand what's causing this issue. Denny, you had a comment.
I just want to ask one quick question, and, you know, I listened to you guys talk about the dollars, and of course, I'm not looking at anything that you're looking at, but I know at my house, when I find myself running short, instead of trying to figure out where I can go borrow more money, what I try to do is figure out how to spend less. And I've not heard that comment come up once in this whole time. You're looking at money from this account to that account. Well, I haven't heard anybody say, why don't we spend less? Why don't we take a look at possibly not having some of the bills that you currently have? I don't know, it's just, I'll throw that out there because that's what I have to do.
I think that's a valid statement.
I mean, something to look at.
I think that's why we need to step back, put money there to take our current, and then say, what is this? Is there something we can?
Yeah.
I don't know. I look at a lot of bills, and there's not a lot of bills that I'd say you could just stop completely. There are probably in anything you do some, but I wouldn't say you couldn't.
Maybe trim some.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's gotta be a way. I mean, we always figure out a way when we have something come up.
Doug Gordy?
Okay.
We appreciate, that's a good comment.
If you've heard me talk at many of these meetings, you know I'm pretty frugal and conservative. There's not a whole lot of flexible costs. I mean, the cost structure that's built in, we put the budget together. At this point into the year, we could trim some things here, but it wouldn't be of the magnitude that would address this problem. I mean, there's no way we should be operating at a razor thin $20,000. So I guess there's two things I think we need to do to kind of, so we can move on. One is decide how we're going to get us out of this $20,000 balance so we can go on. But the second thing, more importantly, because that's simple to do, how did this happen? How did all of a sudden, I mean, if we had some huge extraordinary expense in the last month or the previous month that was unforeseen and pushed us way over the budget, you know, we would have had some knowledge of it. But to find out when we think we're sailing along okay, that we're at
And that's why I'm wondering if it's being looked at differently.
yeah, I'm concerned because just to follow, looking at his reports, if you look at the last treasurer's report, it showed $1,279,000 is the account balance, and then it went down to 667. So, and I understand that maybe it was double. I'm not exactly sure, but it went from July 31st account balance in unrestricted accounts, 1.2 million. July 31st account balance, unrestricted, 667. So it went in half. So I think we were counting some things wrong. I mean, maybe we had a false sense of security.
Yeah, that's why we
I
arranged.
mean, we were looking, we looked like we were in Paul Cotton.
Well, I'm
This
wondering if
is last month. We were sitting there saying, hey, we got $1.2 million sitting unrestricted. Now we find out we got 667 a month later.
But when you look, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't. Do you have a copy of the previous one? I just went through these. That's the same. There's nothing in here that changed with that, and that didn't change that much, right? that was, it's 187 today, I think we have. So let's say it's 200. From this to 200 still would have left us 800,000. Am I right on my math or not? If you take this new number, which you, here, right here.
These numbers don't line at all.
Something,
And there's
yeah.
somehow the numbers.
That's the only thing we've reduced that I see over here, right? Am I saying it right? So if you take that from this number, I still think you'd be 100 and, or close to $95,000. So how do we, where's the difference going down?
This 339 should not have been added in twice
I don't see how it was added.
because of the totals. That's why I rearranged it this way.
Oh, this was never in this number. Now, are you thinking it was in
It
this
is
number?
in this one. Because it's part of this number. It is included in
I
there.
got what you're saying there, okay. So the previous just was not
Accurate.
reflecting the
This
accuracy.
is accurate. This is accurate.
I think you're right, Gordy said this well in some ways. How do we fix it now? And I guess we gotta put some money aside, and the other is we need to have a meeting once Connie's able to look at this, and we'll look at the expenses and say, what is it that this is? What, in Connie, from a revenue perspective, and what is it we have? I don't see a lot of extra expenses that are just being paid for anything outstanding.
And it also looks like on our revenue side, when you look at what we collected, we've only collected 12% of what our revenues are. So we're running on a budget. When you're looking at 800,000, we've only collected for 2 months worth 12%. And so that's gonna bring you down, so you're gonna have a
What do you have in
lull
June? You have June?
That's
until,
exactly my point is
Yeah.
that
Because I'll bet you.
we're not gonna collect our operating
until December, which is halfway through our budget cycle, which then drops you into the hole.
So,
Where you're dipping into a fund balance or whatever you want to call it, the excess fund balance or whatever. And then ideally it would go back up by the time you got through the end of fiscal. It would be interesting, I don't know if you and Connie or you and Kathy are going to work on it, but it would be interesting to pull the budget comparison for last year at the same time to just see
Yeah, the
potentially
history.
where it's sitting,
Is
where we
this-
always.
Is this the flow? Is this the ebb and tide of
Well,
it,
and maybe
or-
it shouldn't be the flow,
No.
but maybe it has been, which is why we're in the position we're in now. And we need to figure out how to
Well, there is
cut costs or
I'm not gonna-
improve us.
no,
That was always kind of stuff.
yeah, and now we don't even have it.
I would think we need a motion to move some money and to pay till we get this figured out.
I'd like to make the motion, it's a transfer or a loan? Let's make it a loan. From the septic plant funds of 187,000, currently it's in 187,000 approximately, of 50,000, so we're not back to this in a month, 50,000 into the general fund.
Are you taking
Until time
187?
that, huh?
50,000.
50,000, until time that we find out what the real situation is on our revenue versus expenses, a cash flow problem. What is it? I don't think we understand, and sitting here,
We could spend all night, we don't have all the facts in front of us. We have data in front of us, but not all the other.
so when you sort out where we really are, then we can make the adjustment back, or whatever adjustment, find out what's going on.
I would like to see more than 1 month of this then, because I'm telling you right now, it's the way you're looking at something, I think. I could be wrong, but you change the format of your report and all of a sudden we've got this major issue that in 8, 9 years I've never heard of. So I'm thinking that somehow when you change your report, it changed the numbers. And maybe they were always off like that, but
I think they were always, I think it was hidden before.
it's
Well,
one of those where we know we've got, you're paying your bill out of your paycheck, even though your paycheck's not here yet. And that's something we shouldn't be doing. And
We
if
have- we
that's
have
what
a
we've
motion.
been doing, then
let me offer, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second for that motion?
Can I just,
Then we'll have a question, or you want to do it after?
well, I'd like a timeline. If we're taking 50,000, can we say like January 1st we replace it, because we'll have, then we're gonna have some cash flow. We can do it, so it's
Alone
just a
until
loan
January
for the
first.
Can we, by next board meeting, get an explanation of what happened? I mean, I always want to know.
Yeah, but we're gonna make a motion to move
And
money
then-
in like a debt.
Yeah, it's a loan. We did it, instead of a transfer from one fund to another, it's a loan from one fund to the other. So it has to be repaid.
But let's just put a date, to be returned by.
When are you done collecting the winter taxes typically?
December 1st.
Yeah, we'll have December 1st, so we'll get a bunch at the end of December, and then we'll have it all by February 15th.
So
200,000.
make it by February 15th, and then you
If
don't
not
have to-
sooner.
Yeah, right.
If we find there's a problem, we'll do it soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got that motion?
Do we have a second to that?
I'll second it.
Because we're talking about money, we need a roll call. A question, that's good,
The
good motion.
motion's been made and everything. What would it take to get us through this month? I know Gordy's got 50,000. Have you got a roundabout close figure of what it would be?
Are we gonna be doing this next month, or?
Well,
I think we
I'd
don't
like
know
to
the
see
revenue
something
yet.
done. I mean, you talked about having
Do we?
we're talking about having another special meeting on this during the month. At that time, I think we should have something figured out at that point in time.
Well,
So that
we've got the 57 here, and then, what do we have, 2 or 3, I think there's 3 payrolls this month.
There are 3 payrolls in this month.
And how much are those?
Things like about
yeah,
I'm not
later.
seeing
I
it
think
together,
this,
so I can't get down
8 or
here.
12%.
I would say around 12, and then it bumps up a little bit because then you have your monthly people, and I do have quarterly pay going in. So 36, well, what, 40?
So 40 and 57 would be what we would need. And
35, but 50, so 85. Is there any
I'm sure.
revenue coming in?
No, maybe, I think maybe 9,000 got to do for 1%. That's left.
So you're still short.
This one.
The only thing that I know we could have coming in was the zoning fee that was pretty significant. But that's just a temporary hold.
Yeah, we don't know if that's coming.
We don't know who will or not, that's right, no, that's correct.
We could have some cable TV fees, that's not a whole lot, but, charter.
Go ahead, George.
Okay, this says, according to the most recent report, the August, which shows the August 31st account balance, right? 634,000. That's totally unrestricted funds.
You mean, no, that's not totally unrestricted funds. 614 of that is, if you look down at the italics, those are what's restricted out of that 634.
Okay, 614 is restricted?
Correct.
Total.
Okay,
They're
gotcha.
restricted by us, though, right?
Right.
Jeff, you have a
Okay.
comment?
This needs to be cleaned up.
But payroll and all that is out of that restricted fund.
No, it isn't.
No.
It's out of non-restricted.
I'm looking at last month's report, and when you calculated the unrestricted accounts, you calculated differently than you did in August.
Right.
And maybe that's what you guys already talked about, but in July, you took the general fund accounts and the self-funded accounts payable reserves, and you added those two numbers together instead of subtracting them.
That's what I said. That's what I said.
So there's an error.
So there was a $354,000 error.
That's the
In your
septic
report.
plan, yeah.
No, that's not, that's the self-funded accounts payable reserves. Self-funded payable accounts, payable reserves committed in last month's was added to the general fund accounts. When I add up that column there, it comes out to almost 1.2 million.
Okay.
So those two top numbers last month were added together.
Right.
This month you subtract
Because
the
they're.
second one from the top
Right,
one.
because that's, yeah, exactly right. Right.
Okay, we have a motion on the table, we have a second. Any other questions?
Yeah, is there enough?
There's,
Huh?
I think we figured out that there
Well,
wasn't.
Connie said there was 20 already when she started the conversation, right? Am I-
35, or 33.
20 plus the 50 we're putting in there.
Yeah, and we need
And
97.
we need 97, we got 83.
Well, but we haven't, Connie hasn't been able to tell us how much, because we're a month behind on reporting, how much additional money is.
Yeah, we
Is
did.
there? Oh, you did? Well, I didn't.
Yeah, and, because this is August, and in September, we had 123 come in, which brought us up to 143. We had 110 go out in September. So as of today, we have 33.
So we put 50 or something?
So we got 57 sitting here waiting to get paid, and we have 3 payrolls.
Well, I would still suggest that we're gonna have to have another meeting. I don't think we have enough data, I really don't, in front of us to see it all. And I think we need to look at past years, what's going in, we need to look at all that and to understand it. Without it in front of me, it's very hard to see it all. And Connie's trying to help us with that, with the numbers, but it's hard to see it all.
Yeah.
So I would think, from my perspective, we ought to put the money there now so we get going. We're gonna have to have another meeting. We're gonna have to look at this with data in front of us to understand, like Paul said, we've never seen it before. It's his perspective, mine is too. We need to understand what has happened that's made that difference. Because I don't know of any major expense we've had.
Not only that, but to come up at the board meeting, obviously, this report probably wasn't ran just before the meeting. Was it?
It was part of the packet.
Right. And so these questions were out there before the meeting. If it would have been brought to others' attention, maybe some research could have been done, and some of these questions could have been answered. Because now we're talking about having another meeting, which is time out of everyone's schedule, and not that we don't want to get it right, but why can't we get it right now? I know we can't now because we don't have that information. But in the future, I mean, that's a very substantial issue. And to find out about it at the meeting in the way we have is inappropriate. I mean, I still think that something's looked at differently, and that's what the issue is. But
Just a curious question. How soon before the meeting is a packet received by each one of you so that you have an idea what's going on?
This packet was available on Thursday, Nancy? Yes.
Thursday of this week?
We're really
or last
trying to
week?
get, yes, last week.
Okay, so that information that she's talking about was in the packet for Thursday last week for today's meeting, right?
Well, I think what Paul's saying, this information is there.
Yeah.
And in fact, what Connie's telling us tonight, when we look at this, oh, we only got 20,000, that you can't see out of this, nor
Okay.
can I see the money Connie's collected in the current month, what do you call it? September month, so I don't see that, because
Okay.
we're always looking at a monthly.
Well,
So that's why we need to
Yeah.
really dig into the.
I only asked that because when I
That's
was
fair.
sitting on boards, they gave us plenty of time for us to study it and read it and ask questions before the meeting. That way, we're prepared for the meeting. I just was curious.
Gene, you have a question? So.
I'm not sure if Doug got an answer to his question because you said you needed 57 plus 3 payrolls. I don't know how much 3 payrolls is. Did you get your question answered about how much do we need?
No, I
Is
have,
50 the right number to transfer or loan? Is that? I think that was the question.
I said it would be about 40, around 40, would be my guesstimate for payroll.
97,000 is what everybody's tallied, has been tallying, is we need about 97, by transferring the 50, we're gonna have about 83.
Gee,
The good thing is, it's a loan versus in the past, a lot of transfers were done and then just lost forever. So this will hang.
Sounds like 17,000 short.
Is it not enough? You're doing the math.
From what she's saying.
from what I'm hearing, that's where I'm coming, is 17,000 short. So I think your motion.
Should be 67,000.
Right.
I could pull that number from you know where.
Right.
We have a couple choices. We can vote down the motion and redo it. We can ask Woody if he'd like to amend his motion.
I'd like to amend my motion that the amount loaned from the septic plant fund to the general fund be an amount of $70,000. and will be repaid no later than February 15th
Or sooner, you said.
or sooner. And we will get an explanation as to how did we end up in this month, October, find out we got $20,000 in the bank.
Kathy, you second that, you agree with that?
Sure, I'll second that.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I think we need a roll call. You have a question, you start asking?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is there anything on here we can delay? Okay. Do we have to pay all of it?
I looked through all the tables.
There's nothing that struck me as being, I mean, there's not in huge numbers. There isn't any,
I think the one thing I could probably revisit is the insurance for the pool from municipality. What is it?
Michigan Municipal League.
Yes, that one. I know I've got the invoice sitting in my desk, but,
Oh, that's the 11,000?
yeah.
Because, I mean, we could just put them into the November's packet once we...
Remember, right now, remember, it was 5 weeks from the day because of election. So we probably had to have a special meeting to pay bills anyway. Just, yeah, just because of the election, that's all. That's the only biggie, I think.
I think that has a later due date on it.
$11,000.
Yeah, the 11th.
So you think we could move it out?
I'd love to check the invoice.
Recommend we take a short recess so she will check the invoice.
Thank you.
Let's do that, 5 minutes or less. I'll look at you, I'll look at